Okay,
Yep,
great.
visible.
Thank you so much. So I will try to be very quick in the presentation. It's only 4 slides. So this is what happened actually in COP27. The outcomes, one of the major outcomes, as it is being called a historic agreement, which is the loss and damage agreement on, compensating the countries who have suffered from climate change. However, the details and nitty-gritty and establishment and structure and who pays what and where and so on, still something to be discussed. Also, a fund of 214 million on climate risk facility was approved, called Global Shield Financing Facility. The Secretary General of the UN made a call for early warning systems for developing countries for $3.1 billion to be established over the next 5 years. In terms of finance, some countries have made financial pledges, like Italy 1.5 billion over the next 5 years, Netherlands 1.8 billion, the UK 1.6, and so on. Saudi Arabia established the Middle East Green Initiative for 2.5 billion. Australia 200 and so million. And there was also a commitment from the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, which increased to 80 members and represents 10.9 trillion in assets. In terms of adaptation, 230 million pledges for adaptation was made for the fund, 105 million for the GEF adaptation work, 365 million for the adaptation in Africa, covering various initiatives. In terms of mitigation, some countries have updated and increased their NDCs, like Mexico, Tanzania, Slovenia, and so on. 150 signatories signed the Global Methane Pledge, which is, methane is 1/3 of climate gases. A just energy transition partnership with some countries with $8.5 billion was established. A global offshore wind alliance to tackle 380 gigawatts by 2030 was established. Clean energy, 500 million for manufacturing in India and 50 million in Egypt. Net zero countries increased to 18 countries. And the Forest and Climate Leadership Partnership was announced that the UK will fund 100 million and 75 other millions for the forest communities. In terms of technology, $10 million have been donated and committed to the Climate Technology Trust Fund that is managed by UNEP. EU and Egypt signed an MOU on green hydrogen, and Netherlands established a facility for training 10,000 people on active mobility. In terms of transparency of the outcomes or on transparency issue, the training programs established to start in 2024, GEF guidance and commitment for resources were issued. And in terms of mitigation of Article 6 on transferable mitigation, an Africa Carbon Market Initiative was established for 300 million credits per year. So what the COP27 did not achieve: no reconfirmation of the 1.5 degrees centigrade, which was agreed in Paris, and debate whether to keep it or not, but still no confirmation. No fossil fuel phase out clear statement in the final document. COP failed to go beyond the 2021 Glasgow Climate Pact, a promise on phasing down unabated coal power. No serious commitments on mitigations, low level of NDC commitments. And the COP did not, while there was a lot of discussion on food security and food issues, no food systems as a full system approach has been agreed upon, and certainly not on agriculture. These are some of the events and activities by UNEP, but it is not that important. So this is what I wanted to share with you. If anybody looks at this, you might say, well, wow, all these billions have been approved and committed. So it is a very successful COP and loss and damage. But in fact, many years ago, it was agreed that $100 billion on an annual basis will be committed to climate change. And that has not happened so far. So all of these initiatives or commitments are just, probably add on. But the main commitment of the $100 billion annual has not been committed. Also, the moral commitment of the 1.5 is no longer there. Today, our executive director issued a statement that it is unrealistic, even if we come all together to keep the temperature to 1.5. So we are going beyond 1.5 in a few more years. So this is from my side. As I mentioned, a number of friends have asked for the floor, and I will give the floor in accordance to the request that I received. So the first request was from Rabbi Jonathan Nurel, who is the executive director of the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development based in Jerusalem. So Jonathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Iyad, for bringing us together. Good to see a number of you. So, I was really happy to see a lot of sessions from faith-based organizations there at COP27 during the 8 days that I was there, and I appreciate the spreadsheet that Iyad put together about the faith-based events. It looked like there were around 20 events that were organized, and I was also disappointed to see that the number of fossil fuel lobbyists outnumbered the number of clergy there, probably by a factor of 10 to 1. And I would, like to explore with all of you about the possibility of having a much more robust faith presence at COP28, including the possibility of a full pavilion, which I understand hasn't transpired at past COPs. That would be a collaborative project involving many organizations and really do justice to the contribution that religious communities can bring to bear on the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. This was very brief and precise. Yes, we need to think about a pavilion, a standalone faith pavilion. In fact, we're organizing one with our partners for COP15, and hopefully we can work together for COP28. Especially, again, it is in the Middle East area in Dubai. And to tell you the truth, I have been talking to some partners in UAE who are willing to support this call for establishing a pavilion. So this is a wonderful and concrete suggestion. The second friend that I have received request is Richard Jordan from World Harmony Foundation. Richard, the floor is yours. I saw Richard joining.
Yes, are you able
to hear me? Now, yes,
we
can.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much for this very welcome initiative. And might I request, if possible, for you to send those slides to all of us. It would be most helpful, even though I was one of the 5 original founders of the Earth Negotiations Bulletin. Your slides were much easier to read than the ENB summary. Some quick points. I would support a standalone pavilion, but is there a common place that we could develop for prayer, simply for prayer. Much like the Tillman Chapel at UN headquarters, if you know that. It just has the symbols of all the faith traditions, a place where we could go to meditate, and a quiet space. It doesn't have to be verbal prayer. And if we could, some people who are not on the to develop a prayer service, and we might even use the Earth and Faith book, which was published in 2000 by UNEP. Very, very useful. I would also suggest that we investigate joining forces with the nuclear disarmament coalitions. We are talking, as I see it, only to climate and to people of faith and finance. It would be most useful to do that, and I can forward to you a very useful a website that might provide some food for thought. Ruud Lubbers, the former late Prime Minister of the Netherlands, was the only one at UN headquarters that I ever heard link suggest that out of the President of the General Assembly's list of mandated events and conferences stretching to 2025, that we look also at the roadmap presented yesterday in the end of the second committee. That was extremely useful, and I could send you a brief recap of what I heard there. Thank you again for this great opportunity.
Thank you very much, Richard, and very concrete suggestions. And of course, this is for everybody to consider. On the Earth and Faith publication that was issued in 2000, in fact, we issued 2 years ago a Faith for Earth revision of that. I hope you have had the chance to look at it. But certainly, we're open to co-publish, similar important documents with anybody.
Yes,
I
thank
will
you
not,
very much.
Okay, so thank you. I also invite Mr. Pardeep Mohapatra from Diama. Please, Pardeep. Pardeep, are you with us? I saw him joining. Pardeep, are you there? Okay, so waiting for Pardeep to be able to join or connect. Grove Harris from Temple of Understanding. Grove, are you there? Yes, you are.
Yes, I am. Good morning, colleagues, and thank you very much for pulling us together. And I've heard some interesting comments and would also like to get the copy of the slides that you sent. And Richard Jordan, if you want to send out that summary you've got, that would be great. And it's true, your new publication is available as a link. So maybe you'd be so kind as to send that link around too. I've put it recently in a Temple of Understanding web presence there. So I really appreciate that recap of the outcomes, because I didn't get much of that from my trying to monitor from it afar. And if you don't mind, I'd like to respectfully offer some comments that come from a kind of a different social location. I need to speak to an interfaith gathering on, it's actually multi-faith, but coming together for the environment that works locally. And they're asking me about what kind of hope do they get out of this event where they didn't see the world coming together in the way that we locally come together to say, we need to protect our place of living. We are in an ocean setting and we are making plans, and we did not feel the kind of rallying that we would have liked. So for myself, in speaking to them, I'm trying to think about trying to mitigate some of the aspiration for a global rallying that I don't think was realistic to expect from this COP27. So I think that we need a lot more understanding about what is possible and what is not. And I think folks are noting the fossil fuel industry had a lot more influence in this event and got in some ways a lot more out of it with their own networking than we may have. So the hope is obviously in carrying on. Nature bats last, and we are in very deep trouble. And we need to look at other areas of UN work that will potentially augment and influence this one. So there's been a recent breakthrough in some of the tax justice work, because really this loss and damage fund is going to need to be filled up. That's going to need to be an extraordinary amount of money. So where else may that come from? And clearly I'd like to see that come from the incredible amounts of windfall profits that have been made recently by companies that did nothing to increase their efforts, but simply benefited from an incredibly devastating war. That money needs to be pulled for the common good. And that was not what was on the table at this COP. But that has to happen and feed into the work of this COP. I also am going to be speaking to my local audience about Oxfam's work, which actually now highlights the individuals who are investing in the fossil fuels and are personally making incredible amounts of money. That we as a globe and we as people of faith have some ability to look at individuals and say, are you living out your faith? And to call out those specific individuals for the kind of turnaround that we wanted from a very difficult consensus process. I'm not sure consensus is really the way to actually achieve a way of iterating the issues and moving a group forward. But at this moment in time, we need really decisive change actions, and those may take force in other areas that complement what the aims that we're trying to achieve here. I think we also have to be critical about the size of this kind of event, given our environmental aims. I am not really sure, or at least I would like some transparency and a place to question what is the impact of 35,000 people coming in the same place. What is the impact of people coming physically, all of the airplane miles? What is the financial collective impact of that event? What is the takeaway from that? I think it was mostly in tents and materials that were temporary. But what's the environmental impact? And have some transparency about that. Also, what is the amount that it costs an individual to attend? Because I think we're going to have to make it viable for more participation in a more environmentally and financially friendly member way. Yeah, and to just really have more place for that kind of reflection. And again, Iyad, I really appreciated your overview this morning and UNEP's work on evaluating this for us. From my perspective, the lack of a global turnaround and the lack of saying we've seen the light, we've read the science, it was an unrealistic expectation, and it has not been met. So we need to be looking for hope in other ways. And yet another big meeting is not really a viable source of hope on the ground for people who are committing themselves and working on all levels they can. We need leadership from the top levels with action behind it in every region, every government, and from the UN. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Grove, for your reflections, and I can submit to all of them. Of course, what has happened does not meet the expectations of most of the people. And I can tell you, for the in-person meeting, we have in UNEP established a division for digitizing global environmental governance. And that means we are putting in place rules of procedure for allowing negotiations to take place online. And we have been facing resistance from member states because they tell you that most of the agreements actually happen in the corridors or after hours, or so they need the face-to-face negotiations. And sometimes it is essential or it is necessary to go to war to establish peace. So we might to pollute a little bit just to prevent the pollution. So definitely, but all points are very important. The last person that I have requested the floor to speak is Matthias, the co-chair of the Sustainability Center of the World Evangelical Alliance. Matthias?
Thank you very much, Dr. Iyad. I hope you can hear me well. I'm very sorry I have to jump in a couple of minutes, but thanks, Iyad, for being able to bring an idea, building on everything we have already achieved within the Faith for Earth initiative and Faith for Earth coalition, and also taking some of the ideas that were circulated here in this call, in this recap call already. I just wanted to share experience we have made as World Evangelical Alliance, which has come to be a good practice on our side to do some kind of letter diplomacy. I've just posted on that also into the chat, where we, between the COPs, really engage in some letter writing to key negotiators, heads of parties, environment ministers, so whoever the decision maker is in different countries. So I would be very open and want to propose this to our circles also to carry this idea one step further into the multi-faith space and into the Faith for Earth Coalition's work, because I think it is really key to also put in some asks, but also encouragement and some inspirational ideas in the form of letters to specific individuals. Because in the end, what we're talking of is also relationship building between people. And I can only tell you I had some very, very interesting one-to-one conversations, confidential conversations with environment ministers in Sharm el-Sheikh. And people are moved if you tell them that many people around the world are praying for them and praying for an ambitious level of their activities at such COPs. So let us also, besides all the super important thematic work, invest in relationship building. And I think it's a strong signal if some of these letters are co-signed by several faiths, or also in the name of the Faith for Earth Coalition, as much as this is possible. So thank you. I just wanted to bring in this idea. Back to you, Iyad.
Thank you very much, Matthias. This is very important. And this brings an issue that we do need to prepare and work on preparing for the upcoming COP from today. So I would suggest that we consider today's meeting as the first meeting in preparation for COP28. Because as you mentioned, Matthias, we do need to do a lot of building trust and connections with those who are in power. And meeting at the COP does not do the trick. We have to start tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, asking for meetings with ministers, with those policymakers, and on the issues that is of concern to everybody. So this is a very welcome initiative, and indeed, letters every day going out from faith leaders to those decision makers is very important. So I will give back the floor to Pardeep, and then I will give the floor to those who have raised their hands. Pardeep, you were one of the people sent me an email, so the floor is yours. Please go ahead. Go ahead, Pardeep. We hear you. Maybe.
Is it audible? Is it audible? Is it audible?
Yes. We hear footsteps.
Thank you so much. And it's your good presentation, and it's all this. Even if allotment or commitment. It's like this, all the things. But it is all the commitment, my fund commitment, and it's where it will be goes. And there is no clear roadmap whether it will be government or the UN or this INGOs or this there is no clear roadmap. This is one. Second thing, more pathetic is there is no commitment for the food systems. And due to climate change and vulnerabilities, poverty is increasing, desertification is increasing, and its loss of biodiversity is increasing, gender inequality is increasing, and moreover, this is the way we are talking about nutritional loss is increasing, because this food systems and soil itself provides 90% of the food system, and soil where the food starts, and there is no provision for food systems. I think that the house should take that kind of a decision, or any kind of resolution, put it logically, so that how best this is the food system will be ensured, and larger community are on this track of this poverty vulnerabilities. They can be addressed. I think this is my few words, and it's take a note, and it's we can interact with others also. We can hear from others. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pradeep, for reiterating the problems that we have. Yes, no roadmap for the loss and damage, no food systems agreement. Soil has not been addressed as part of the climate change issue. So many issues that have still need to be addressed. So very much appreciate reiterating those. So I will ask Don De Silva. Please, Don, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Couple of things. One is, having been at the first climate expert group meeting with UNEP, and then also later on with the creation of the climate initiatives like UN FFFC and so on, I'm very pleased with the fact that you were able to get some traction moving on loss and damage. So congratulations to UNEP and to all of you there. Also, on the positive side, the very fact that there have been some commitments towards funding, despite what is going on in the world at the moment, is also positive from UNEP's side, and also from all the other organizers responsible. One thing to be clear, Iyad, is that those who did not attend at this for this particular event, we did not get the outcomes that you highlighted. These were not necessarily reported in the media. So it is really important, if possible, with your slides, these kinds of things could be distributed to us so that we can then distribute it, in my case, amongst the World Buddhist networks that I'm involved with, because not many people know about these positive outcomes. The focus appears to be largely on the negative. As you have said, it is important to start from now onwards for COP28. This is really quite clear. So it is important. At the same time, I'd just like to say that we need to also have a certain amount of humility within our faith organizations to turn the searchlight inwards. The loss and damage done by faith organizations concerning people and the environment throughout the world is irreparable. Particularly if you take, for instance, the situation concerning the status of women among religious and faith organizations. The damage is just like with climate change and the environment, irreparable. So that's just one example. So let's not go into, by all means, it is important to hold the feet of the government representatives to power. But let's also turn the searchlight inwards into what is happening. Also, just to highlight one last point, there are still very powerful climate deniers in the world of faith, right across the world, and we need to deal with them as well, because they are, as before in the days of colonialism, in lockstep with those in governments, in industry, who work to diminish the impact of the concern for climate change in action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don, for your usual wisdom, and thank you for all the positive things that you have mentioned. And I share with you that we need to practice what we preach from a faith perspective. And I'm happy that there are so many good initiatives coming out from faith institutions, but that is not enough. If we are calling for, a more ambitious global attention to climate change, we need, as faith organizations, to do more ambitious work internally and with the entire world. Of course, investment by faith organizations is one important area. So thank you very much for that. And of course, we are capturing all these points, and we will share with you the presentation and the points that have been mentioned in this call. So I would like to call on an important player, Henrik Rappe, who is the chair of the Interfaith Liaison Committee for UNFCCC, who's been instrumental over the past 27 COPs. Henrik, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's not 27, but at least the last 15 COPs I have been involved in the interfaith work. So I was happy for COP27 to see that there were so much more of faith leaders and faith representation at the COP. I'm happy for that, and looking forward to the preparation of next COP in the Emirates. I would just like to remind us all that we have something called the Interfaith Liaison Committee since 10 years to the different COPs, and that is an open network for everyone to participate, who are participating at the COPs. And during the COVID times, we also have done some more of our work and also having different webinars. We are looking in every way how we best can connect to each other. I think we also have to think of what is the added value of faith communities coming to COPs, because I think there is a special added value, and I think that is the different narratives there are, different faith tradition comes to, with a kind of moral obligation to act on this. And from our different faith traditions, we can actually contribute to have an effect to urge the decision makers to take the decision that science say we must do. So for me, I think it's for next COP, I think it's the more we can think of what is our added value as faith communities, how can we best cooperate before COP, because as it was said before, much of the advocacy must be doing at home in the capitals of the different countries, because they are already coming with their negotiation points already there. But also, what can we show of what kind of unity can we show from the faith communities on the will to action for a climate just society in the future? I hope that we preparing for next COP will also be a part of this, will actually to find out ways how we can illustrate faith communities action and will for a sustainable future. of course, there is good if we can have a pavilion and we can show the different faith communities what the action on the divestment, on green action and so on, whatever it is. But I also think strategically, it is important also that we can show interfaith standpoints on the climate discussions, like you see in the call to COP27 that we made on the interfaith Talanoa dialogue. And also this time we will prepare for an interfaith Talanoa dialogue from the Interfaith Liaison Committee, and we are inviting you all to take part in preparation for that, because the more inclusive we are, the more we can show that the faith community's activities on climate change, the better it is. So thank you, Iyad, for calling us together on this, but looking forward also how we best can be as inclusive as possible to all of those preparing for COP, not only going to COP, but also preparing for COP in the different countries and in different regions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henrik, and thank you for all your work over the years, and specifically during COP27. And it is you and others who have established the Interfaith Liaison Committee, without which faith leaders or faith actors wouldn't have a voice at the different COPs. And definitely, I mean, we do need to keep bringing the moral responsibility towards living in harmony with nature, and our moral responsibility to tackle climate change. Policymakers and government presidents and kings and so on, when they face a personal problem, they resort to God or their gods, but they are not taking climate change as a personal issue, addressing their own kids and their own well-being. We need to make that, a personal issue for each one of them, so they go back to God and, to their principles, moral and ethical and faith principles. What I would suggest, Henrik, and this is just a thought, that we expand the Interfaith Liaison Committee. I heard your call to everybody to join. This is excellent. And that Faith for Earth, UNEP, works as a secretariat for the interfaith community. So we call for the meetings, we assist you, we present the UN thinking, the scientific components, the policy components, because we do have access to that. So we can, as we did for the preparations for Stockholm Plus 50, we held monthly meetings to coordinate, to discuss the issue at hand and so on. So we would propose ourselves as the secretariat for the Interfaith Liaison Committee and support you with the documentation, with the information, with gathering, calling for meetings, and so on. So I hope this proposal meets you and the other colleagues approval. I mean, if you want anybody to put in the chat if they approve of this, then that would be, sort of a voting. In interest of time, I would like to ask Sister Dr. Rachel Mash to take the floor and share her ideas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iyad, for this very important meeting. So just a few comments. The first thing is, I think for us as faith leaders, it is important for us to start with the NDCs in our own country. We have to be pushing our own countries to be stronger on their nationally determined contributions. That's where it needs to start. And then I think, secondly, as the Anglican Communion, we would be very supportive of the Interfaith Pavilion at COP28. But another issue that we've picked up is a lot of the climate activists are very traumatized. It is incredibly traumatizing to stand up in front of people, to pour your heart out of your situation of loss and damage, and then to be basically slapped in the face when the conference makes no progress. So some kind of healing space where people could be prayed for when they're traumatized. And then the third issue we've been discussing is, how do we actually, at the moment, we're outside the room looking in and having side events and sort of speaking to each other. But how do we get people inside as negotiators? Now, it seems like some of, particularly the smaller countries or the developing countries, they cannot afford to fill all of their accreditations, their passes. So is there a possibility for those countries, thinking like, say, a country like Malawi, for example, where the faith communities have a very good relationship with the Department of Environment, that we could send faith representatives to be part of the national government's negotiating team, and then the faith communities could say that we will help with the support to get them there, the flight and the accommodation and so on. And then the last point is to note that we have people of faith. We don't have to actually send priests or imams. We have presidents who are, for example, the president of Seychelles is an Anglican priest. We already have people of faith who are part of these government negotiating teams. How do we identify them and support them and recognize their faith and encourage and support them as people of faith as well as politicians? Thank you.
Wonderful. Always wonderful to listen to you, Rachel, and very practical and important proposals and ideas. Indeed, I mean, maybe, of course, all of you have listened to the opening sessions, and Al Gore, actually, a politician, a ex-vice president, talked about the blessings and curses of God in his opening speech, and that was reiterated by the Prime Minister of Barbados. So even politicians resort to religion when they face a calamity. So indeed, and this is why we're saying we have to work from today very powerfully within this network, but also we go back and work with national entities. As you proposed, have faith leaders within the national delegates and give them the moral background of their responsibilities and so on. So this is a very important proposal, and I hope through our coordination mechanism that every month we have a plan of action of our leadership, of our organizations, to send letters to the policymakers we have access to delegations who have attended and planning to attend, and so on. So that would be very important to be a standing item on all of our upcoming meetings. So thank you very much for this important proposal. Dr. Fakhruddin, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Dr. Iyad. Greeting from Bogor, Indonesia. Yes, I heard very brilliant ideas regarding the pavilion of interfaith, that we can serve much more attention for our groups. One thing that we should remember, that if we could, because religions is a matter of the authority areas, which I understand. For example, myself, I'm not really scholars in Islamic thinking, but there are high-level scholars that could become an attraction for the pavilion later on. For example, the Sheikh al-Azhar or Dalai Lama, in order to push the sense of crisis for the follower of faith. That's the idea that's come out from a moment, because we have high level leaders, state level coming or every year, but no high level of faith group coming to that area. Thank you, Iyad.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fakhruddin. Indeed, this is one of the issues that we plan to do with our partners, that I introduced my introduction and said that we are discussing with some partners for COP28. The idea is to convene on annual basis a back-to-back faith leadership discussions not only on climate change, but use the opportunity of COP27, 28, 29, and whenever, to bring in high-level faith leaders. That will have an impact, and that will make a change. We tried to do so in COP27 with the British government and the Egyptian government, but there were some obstacles we could not follow through. So this is a very important point, and we will be working on that, inshallah. So who do I have? Elizabeth Cheryl, please, the floor is yours. You can press.
Can you hear
yes,
me?
Yes. Now we
Okay,
can.
hello, greetings from Rio, Brazil. I just want to say this is a very interesting meeting, and I'm very pleased to be here and hear all these suggestions and how important it is really that we as faith people get involved in these issues that go even beyond climate change, you know, biodiversity and all that's happening in other fronts. But I would just like to say that as somebody who's been living through this issue my whole life, I'm very early on in the environmental field. We've been fighting against basically big money that comes from the oil ever since I can remember. I remember the Rio 92 when we signed the climate agreement. And of course, the US wouldn't sign and other big countries because the lobbying of the oil people. Are we going to let them get away with this now, 30 years? You know, it really, particularly as a faith person, I find it so difficult. We have to find a way out of this. And I think that the two fronts that were mentioned here, I just want to say how I agree that we have to, act as a group and try to lobby the people who have decision makers, particularly not just at government levels, but CEOs of big companies. A lot of them go to church. As a Christian, this is my faith. They go to church and they don't realize that it's totally opposed to what they're doing in their companies. You know, they don't understand I giving them the goodwill that I believe they have. Maybe they haven't understood the science, but anyway, we have been against. They've set up a lobby to underscore or undermine the science of climate change, to make public that this wasn't, you know, this is baloney. I have an American background, and a lot of even family have come to me and said, oh, but that's all politics. This is not politics, it's science. I mean, these are people who are educated, who say they are Christians, and really, so this lobbying of the oil companies is very serious and very difficult to go against. So I think we have to use all our resources, even from, of course, civil society, but us as faith people to get together, and particularly within our faith, to call out the people who are acting, you know, who are in our faith, but who act contrary to it, in the sense that they don't really understand what we're up against when we try to do something about the oil, not just oil, but just the way we use resources in general. They don't realize the seriousness of all this, because it's not upon them at the moment. As somebody else said here, it's not personal to them. We have to make it personal. We have to make them understand this as a group, you know, as within our faiths. I think that's very important. And just not wanting to extend myself very much, I would like to say that I think it's a very good idea that we as faith people try to approach our own governments too. And I can say that in my country, Brazil, I am sure that this new government will be very open to receiving and giving support and everything to actually, Marina Silva is a Christian who's, I don't know if you've heard of her, but probably yes. And she was our Minister for the Environment, and she's a person I know actually personally. And one of our, I'm from the Anglican Episcopal Church, and one of our parishioners, I mean, I don't know, one of the people in our group, we have a group of climate justice, he's on the transition government. So I'm very sure that we can really put this issue for the next COP. And so I'm trying to do my homework, and I think it's a very good idea that everybody should do. Can I just say also that I'm kind of disappointed that we're going to have another COP in an Arab country? Because I find that it's very difficult when the host government is entirely, really not buying the idea of phasing out oil and coal, because it's their own survival. And I understand all the difficulties with that, but it would be very good if UNEP. I know they have the money, and they probably, they want to. I don't know what they want with hosting a COP when they really won't give us the support we need in terms of energy dephasing and so on. Quite honestly, I think it's interesting that we have loss and damages come up, but that's when everybody has suffered already. We're trying to avoid all this suffering of loss and damage. And it just seems that we do one thing with one hand and another, with another, and we're not going to get much if we continue with only loss and damages. We have to get the phasing out on board, particularly also, in agriculture. I found out not just recently that Brazil has one of the greatest methane emissions from cattle. Our emissions were not so big, they've grown. And that really showed to me that we have to do something about this. And that's something that a lot of developed countries don't understand. Even people in Brazil that eat a lot of meat. I'd say, what can I do? It's too big. How can I tackle this climate change? And one thing you can do is stop eating meat. But that's very difficult. Okay, that's my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Very interesting points. And I don't remember who said this, but it was talking to businesses. And he said that you think of businesses when you do your prayers. Think of your prayers when you do your business. So this is exactly what you're saying. CEOs need to adopt the moral and spiritual principles when they do their business. And certainly working with governments, I'm happy that your friend is the Minister of the Environment. And, it's a faith leader. And many faith leaders are actually in the decision making. So we need to address them. And this is why we need to start from now, from today, doing whatever we can do. Now, the next speaker is Dinesh from the World Council of Churches. Dinesh, my friend, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Iyad, and thank you, colleagues. Just wanted to add something a little more to what Henrik and Rachel and others have already spoken. One thing I think is very clear and we are realizing which is important is that going to the COP, when the whole agenda is set by the negotiators who have deliberated months before with their governments and with the neighboring governments and competing governments and have already done negotiations off the table or off the camera. And finally, they are going there to toe their party lines. COP is a conference of parties and they would very little scope is there for any negotiators representing a country that you happen to meet them at the COP as a faith leader and try to convince I'm from your country and then you should do this, this, this. They may say yes due to politeness, but would not really take your conversation into an action which would finally be the covered decisions of the COP. And that I think is important for us to realize. And as Rachel was also underlining that the nationally determined contributions by the governments at that stage, we all must engage and influence the country's lines or positions. That is very important, number one. But number two, also, I'm increasingly witnessing, I myself have been attending since 2009 from COP15 onwards, all the COPs, but I'm also seeing increased participation of faith communities. However, there is this new alliances and bodies are also being formed, which is now we are seeing more and more in these COPs. Now, for example, we have this ecumenical delegations from World Council of Churches or ACT Alliance and Lutheran World Federation from almost from the very beginning of the COPs we've been attending and participating. But now we also have this wonderful coalition led by IAD's Faith Initiative, UNEP's initiative, Faith for Earth. We do have another similar one is where IAD was also involved, Partnership of Religion in Development, where I'm one of the co-chair for the Water, Environment and Climate Action. And now in the COP27, we launched a new initiative called Multi-Faith or Multi-Sectoral Alliance on Climate Action, with many key players, including UNEP and ACT Alliance, etc., involved. We do have Hendrik mentioned the Interfaith Liaisoning Committee. So the more and more these committees coming, that's good sign, that good interest, but we are more and more quote unquote competing interests. And that's where sometimes we might not want to be identified under one umbrella as a collective force. That also tend to then sort of divide our strength or weaken our strength. So it is important not to reinvent the wheels, but on existing resources, what we have, can we strengthen them? I think that is one key point. And finally, I appreciate IAD that we must, like the Stockholm Plus 50 we did, we must already plan our periodic meetings as a preparations, engaging not only the faith groups, but the delegations, the government representatives and negotiators of our countries to buy in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dinesh. That's wonderful, wonderful. And I cannot agree more with you that the more is the merrier in terms of bringing new alliances and new coalitions. But I also agree with you that we do not need to compete, we need to complement. And maybe you heard me and some others during the launch of the new alliance that this is not an alliance that is, taking over. It is with specific focus, with specific projects that neither of the existing coalitions is doing. So indeed, this is very important. And to tell you the truth, some of our faith actors have confided to me that we go to these COPs uncoordinated. We don't know who's doing what. The people attend their own events, but they don't, support other events of other faith actors. So yes, we do need this coordination and complementarity rather than competitiveness. So very much important, and all your other points are well taken. I don't seem to have anybody with a raised hand unless I'm missing something. We're 10 minutes after the hour, so we have spent 60 minutes discussing this. So last chance, anybody who wants to intervene, present. I cannot actually go back to all the wonderful things that were mentioned in the chat. I saw Nigel supporting the idea of establishing this secretariat and follow up regularly and willing to support. Others have also supported this. So, Dr. Aditi, sure, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Iyad. And I could see all of the seniors sharing the wisdom. I come from the generation which is in between the seniors and the youth. And what I feel is for our faith voices, we need to also have the young voices being strongly heard when it comes to, this particular intersection or the group. So if we can probably plan out some substantial work at the intersection with the youngsters, I think that will be heard a lot at the UN. And also, I agree that, with not only women being seen as the receivers of all of the policies and schemes and all, more than that, can women be seen as contributors as part of the faith voices? So they taking up some responsibility, some concrete program being organized for, where women have strong representation. They take up responsibility and bring in the change. So I feel, these two areas can be worked upon when it comes to the faith group. Thank you.
Wonderful, Dr. Aditi. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we are working as UNEP. We have established the Faith for Earth Youth Council. We have 22 young men and women now on the council. So they are establishing themselves. So next COP, they will have a voice and they will be participating from a faith perspective. And also we are establishing an interfaith women faith leaders council. So again, gender issues will be at the top, the leadership. We don't want, as you mentioned, just lip service. We want them to be in the lead and take decisions. So thank you very much. Grove, the floor is yours again.
Thanks very much. I just want to suggest we do some kind of another session around thinking about corporate structures. I was in a way surprised to hear a number of people here say we're going to influence the CEOs. CEOs have a specific job mandate and boards and shareholders that they are responsible to fiscally. They're not the dad of the corporations. So I just think it would be useful to do a strategy session around where those responsibilities lie, where the points of pressure are. And similarly, there's only so much pressure one can put on delegations once they're at the COP. So part of our pushback might be really to be working on national levels, as well as the level of mayors, et cetera, in advance of these events. Just a strategy point. And Iyad, if it's possible for you to continue to help convene us or put that onto the Interfaith Liaison Committee, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I agree with you. It is at the national level, it's, well, I mean, even the CEOs, if they have their boards, but if they feel the international pressure, they will have to go back to their boards and talk to them. So yeah, we will have, get it from all sides. So this is a very important point. My friend Jasnica, I don't see you on, but I see your hand up. So please, the floor is yours. Jasnica? Oh, you're still muted.
Is it okay now?
Yes, it is.
Yes, thank you. I think the main thing is perception of reality. I think it is the basis because everything depends on how people understand themselves in relation to the world around them in the meaning of environment. And in that sense, we have two groups of people in humanity. One are those who understand them as separated from their environment because they think that what they think, feel, and behave has no any effect on the environment. The other group are those who understand them as something united and interconnected. And it is the basic behavior because I think it is in basis of everything. If you understand that what is happening in the outside world, there is no, has no connection with you, you are not interested. Why? And the second important thing is related to nature of perception, because if you understand that something is separated from you, you are attached to basic pattern, which is conflict and struggle. And as Einstein said, there is no solution on the level where conflict is created. You have to go to another level. And that another level is what religion can provide to people, because they can learn how to approach their subconscious mind or soul. It depends whether is scientist the one who talk about that, or is it some from religion? So I think that more activities must be related to that, to learn people. I heard today, and for me it's amazing, to pray, to meditate, how to approach what is subconscious. What is subconscious is not logic, it is out of logic. It is, for example, art, prayer, meditation, and learn them to accept them as a normal part of their life, not only religious, but all other people. But I'm very optimistic. I think that Faith for Us did a lot and is doing all the time. And I think what is called development of consciousness, it's some popular term. It is ongoing process, and what is important is for Faith for Us to be a leader. It is leader, but also for those who are not religion, and somehow to accelerate that process, learning more about beliefs, how beliefs affect emotions, how emotions affect behavior, that it is not something we have no how to say, way to influence. It is something which is in our hand. That's it. I can talk a lot. I write all the time, every day, 2 or more articles all the time, the same. And based on that reactions, I think that people are growing much more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jasnica, for this beautiful intervention. And I agree with you. We need to understand the behavior of the people. The behavior is very important. And this is why we keep saying that the crisis that we are facing is not a climate crisis. That's a crisis of behavior, of ethics, of values, of greed. Yeah. So this is exactly, and definitely we need to do some sort of faith literacy to faith leaders themselves, of their connection to the environment, but also to political leaders with their connection to religions and values and so on. So thank you very much. This is very important. Natalia, my friend, please, your floor is yours.
Thank you. So I am an advisor for the inaugural Faith for Youth Advisory Youth Council, and they are very busily working towards the next COP and talking about ideas on how young people can engage, not just at the high level, but now in terms of facilitating and convening multiple faith actors in the lead up, because these events, they're very carbon intensive and not everyone can participate. And yet what happens to the planet is something that concerns all of us. We are all a part of it. We are all a part of nature. And so how can we start convening now? And how can peace be a process that we build in the lead up to COP in the way that multiple faith actors work together, that see the shared value of doing so? There was a lot of great suggestions that were brought up during all the different points that you all raised. I wasn't at COP, so I can't add to more of the gaps, but that way of working in the lead up to, I think, is really quite important. And the intergenerational knowledge piece as well, having younger and young at heart participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia, and thank you for all the work that you're doing through the Faith for Earth Youth Council and your support and your help. So please keep us informed of anything that you know of that the young people are planning. so we can connect. The intergenerational thing is so important, and we need to make that connection. But the role of youth cannot be underestimated or underplayed. That is very important, and we appreciate all your work and other colleagues. The sons and daughters that we rely on. So please keep us all informed and engaged. So we're now. I don't have anybody who's asking to speak. I believe we have many action points. We started, I think we had 60 people online. Now we're 35, so everybody is exhausted at the end of the day. So probably people are starting their day, but we will follow up with sort of a summary report of this meeting, and we will take it up with the Interfaith Liaison Committee to come up with a plan to keep this alive and support all of the good intentions that all of you have come up with. So if there are no other people who are asking for the floor, I thank you all, wish you a happy Thanksgiving again, and a happy weekend, a happy days ahead, and until we meet again. Thank you very much. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
Dr. Iyad.
Thank you so much. Bye.